Hey, y'all, this is Steve. Welcome to our latest episode of Steve Williams and Friends, where we're just going to sit back and have a nice conversation with folks that I found are really interesting and I just love to talk to and just let them share some things about themselves, what have you, and their hobbies. Well, today's guest is an avid Elvis fan. He runs his own YouTube channel called the Elvis Cup Guy. He runs it from his home near Charlotte, North Carolina. Please help me welcome the Elvis Cup Guy himself, Wade Jones.
Well, Steve, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show here, and I managed to check out your website and your podcast and some of the stuff. And it's really interesting. You have a variety of guests, and I checked out your little radio station you've got. In fact, I think when I went on, Bruce Springsteen was playing. I think Born in the USA or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I appreciate it. But yeah, I am the Elvis Cup guy, and the question, and I'm Wade Jones, and the question I get asked most is, why are you the Elvis Cup guy? Okay, that's kind of a strange moniker or handle to have. But the reason I am the Elvis Cup guy is because I got the cup, or a cup, that Elvis Presley drank from at the Charlotte Coliseum, which is now, I think, Bojangles Arena, I believe, back in 1977 when I was 13. And wow. I got it right after the show. So one of my first claims to, if you can call it fame or infamous, I guess, what I'm infamously known for.
I wouldn't say you're infamous. I mean, serial killers are infamous. You're famous.
Well, I guess being known for something that kind of has an odd connotation, maybe. But yeah, so back in 2004 or 2004, I sold the little bit of water that was left in that cup because I had frozen the cup in a freezer when I was 13 after the concert. Oh. And I sold a little bit of the water, or what was left of the water, from the cup on eBay for like $535. Okay.
Wow.
And then that kind of picked up a lot of steam, and it kind of made the news literally around the world. Associated Press picked it up and Reuters picked it up. So it was everywhere quickly. And I followed that up with people were contacting me, wanting me to sell Elvis's cup because I still have the cup. I sold the water out of it. And crazy as it may seem, I did not want to sell the cup. So I devised an eBay auction where I wouldn't sell the cup, but I would sell an appearance of the cup. And part of the stipulations in the auction itself was you could win an appearance of the cup if you won the auction, but you had to fly myself and my wife and the cup to the destination and, put up, expense money and accommodations and travel, and thinking, this is just a kind of a goof thing. I know nobody's going to go for it.
Well, if I were going to do it, all you'd have to do is just drive right down I-85 for about 4 hours.
I know. I was just on I-85 on the way home from work. But so anyway, believe it or not, somebody won the auction and they flew myself and my wife and Elvis's styrofoam cup out to Denver, Colorado. And we stayed there for about a week, going around to different health food stores promoting gluten-free snacks. And the Elvis Cup appeared with us everywhere. And they had, little grand opening things and tastings. And I would never associate Elvis and gluten-free, snack bars. But anyway.
Elvis wouldn't. Elvis wouldn't, for that matter.
No, maybe he should have. But but anyway, so long story short, I still, to this day, have Elvis's cup in my possession, in my house, in a briefcase, So in addition to that, though, that kind of is one minor portion of my appreciation of Elvis. I mean, I collect Elvis stuff. I listen to his music. I have albums, memorabilia, movie posters, personal items, all kinds of things. But people always ask me about that cup that he drank out of, because I guess, of all the things you could collect or own or, be involved with Elvis, a piece of garbage, that should have been thrown away is what I'm kind of known for. So that's kind of an oddity, but it is what it is. But I tell you what,
hey, nobody's got Michael Jackson's cup, just saying.
Well, I guess not. They would have come forward,
Yeah, really. But
and then I had a lot of people.
Unique. You ever thought about having it DNA tested?
No, well, people have mentioned that, but it sat in a freezer for how many years? I took it out of my mom's deep freezer probably in 1986. So it was in a deep freezer for 9 years. So the DNA might have some pot roast, some TV dinners on it, and I've handled it. So I don't know how much of Elvis's DNA is still on it.
That's true. Well, still, I wouldn't want to ruin the thing,
When I went out to Colorado with it, I had a special lucite case made for it and all that. So really, I have not physically touched the cup since 2005 when I put it in its special case.
Wow.
So I've got it locked down because there's really no reason to take it out,
Wade, I know you've been an Elvis fan, I guess, forever. I mean, tell me about when did you first discover Elvis, and why do you remain an Elvis fan to this day?
Well, it's kind of coincidental that we had this thing scheduled for today because this morning I actually hit a milestone on YouTube, the Elvis Cup Guy YouTube channel that I have. I hit 8,000 subscribers today, this morning.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you. And then one of my videos from a couple months ago hit 750,000 views. So three-quarters of
Wow.
a million views. So, yeah, and what I do is on my YouTube channel, and I'm going to go back to your question, but if you want to, there's a lot to be. Well, I feel kind of bad for the person that wants to learn more about why I'm the Elvis Cup guy. But if you go to my YouTube channel, I have so many videos that you probably would not want to watch that discuss when I saw Elvis, when my first Elvis record, and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So if you guys, and I'm gonna go into it right now real quick. But yeah,
Sure.
anybody that wants to just go to YouTube, and for that matter, just go to Google and put in the Elvis Cup guy, and a bunch of stuff will populate in. Okay,
I will be
but
putting a link to your YouTube channel
yes, sir.
in the
Well, thank you.
description. So don't, if, hey, y'all. So just when we get this thing published, I'm going to make sure that we have a link to your YouTube channel, Wade. So that way they don't have to go doing any Google
Yeah,
searches. I know Google is your friend, but we're going to bypass Google.
good, good. Well, I appreciate that. But
Well, I
yeah,
appreciate you, bud.
yes, sir. Well, my parents, okay, my mom and dad, they were somewhat of Elvis fans. My mom was born in 1941, so she would have been, I guess, 15, 16 during Elvis's prime, of like the 50s prime, 1956, 57.
Yeah,
But
my mother was born in 1941, and she was a big Elvis fan. In fact,
yeah,
some of my earliest memories were listening to Elvis albums and eight tracks. And I mean, no offense, I was like ad nauseum around the house. But looking back at it, it's like being exposed to Elvis was something that one of the
right,
things I treasure
and
about my mother.
exactly. And my dad was a little bit older than my mom, but he liked Elvis, but he was more into like country music, gospel
Hmm.
music, that kind of stuff. But he still liked Elvis. But the way I really got into it, and I knew about Elvis's greatest hits
Right.
album that my mom had with Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel and all that, Heartbreak Hotel. But I oddly enough, I can almost pinpoint when I became an Elvis real fan. I must have been maybe 10 or 11, maybe 11 years old, and I
Hmm.
got in a stereo. And I don't know if you remember when Firestone used to have an electronics department. They had you could
Hmm.
buy grills and you could buy stereo equipment at Firestone. And my mom and dad had a Firestone credit card, and for my birthday, I got a stereo from Firestone. And
Cool.
so up until that point, I had Monkeys albums or Tiny Tim,
Yep.
stuff like that. But
Tiptoe through the two.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
Tiny Tim.
so I went with my mom. I think it was, I don't know if you have them there in Georgia, but Roses. You remember Roses?
Oh yeah, I do. I grew up in the suburbs in Gwinnett County in a town called Snellville, and just north of us was the county seat, Lawrenceville, and that was the Roses that we used to go to when I was a
Yeah.
kid. So I remember Roses.
Yeah. So my mom and I, after I got my little stereo,
Hmm.
it was the first instead of just like a little cheap record player, it was a decent stereo with two speakers, stereo, and it was like a big deal
Hmm.
to me. And so I'd saved up some money. Maybe I had $5, $10, I don't know what it was, but we went into Roses and I went to the album section.
Hmm.
Okay. And a lot of people don't realize that even department stores like modern day, like Sears isn't even around, but they had record departments, because
Oh
where else would
yeah,
you,
heck yeah, man, I remember that.
and
I'd love to be in the
well,
record department, dude.
and what's so ironic is now things have come full circle. You can go into Target and there's a dang record section.
Yeah, it looks like the young folks are discovering the joys
Yeah.
of vinyl.
Yeah. So anyway, I went into the record section and I was
Hmm.
thumbing through the albums. Okay.
Hmm.
And I really, believe it or not, I had it narrowed down because some kids at my school had, they talked about music, and I had it between, I think it was Elton John, Don't Shoot Me, I'm Just a Piano Player album. I don't know if
Hmm.
you remember that.
Yeah, I
And it
remember
had all
that.
the big, yeah. And then Elvis live at Madison Square Garden. I had them both in my hands. Okay. And I looked at them and I'm like, the Elton John album looks kind of interesting. And I know a lot of these songs, but this Elvis one with him on the front and it's like in concert.
Hmm.
And I turned it over and read the song listing. And it had, Hound Dog and, Can't Help Falling in Love and Proud Mary and a bunch of, and I said,
Hmm.
that seems interesting. And I'm telling you, if maybe I would have bought like Elvis's greatest hits or I would have bought
Hmm.
any other Elvis album, it maybe wouldn't have struck me, but it was a live album, Elvis
Hmm.
live at Madison Square Garden. And I'm telling you, Steve, if you or any of your listeners have never listened to that album, the electricity, it's a full Elvis concert from the beginning. 2001 Space Odyssey. He comes out on
Oh
stage. He sings
yeah.
And then he just had,
Yeah.
yeah, and then he sings, and a lot of songs are fast, and before you know it, the concert's over. He leaves the stage, and the crowd's going crazy, and that had me hooked, Steve. That had me hooked. So if I would have bought that Elvis album, I might be sitting here talking about Elton John right now. Thank
Well,
goodness I'm
tell you the
not,
truth, I'd
because,
rather talk about Elvis than Elton John, but that's just me. I mean, nothing against
well,
Elton John, folks. You know, if you like Elton, cool, you know, but Elvis, man. Speaking of Elvis, the Madison Square Garden, just before I got on the call, I was watching YouTube and I saw there's this communications coach out of Ireland that did a reaction to Elvis's press conference. Have you ever seen the press conference he did there at the New York Hilton?
yes, where he's wearing the blue suit and gold
Yep.
belt.
And that big old gold belt. And this guy just, I mean, this guy loved how Elvis just handled that crowd. I mean, Elvis was just so down to earth, and he was, I mean, at times he was polite but firm. For example, they asked him some questions about, you know, the things going on at the time, the Vietnam War, women's
Right.
liberation, stuff like that. And Elvis was pretty cool about it. Said, I just, you know, I'd prefer not to talk about that, and you know, just kind of moved on. He just wanted to talk about the music and just emphasize, hey, man, I ain't here to advocate nothing. I'm just an entertainer.
Yeah, and he says I like to keep my political views to myself.
And I do
Uh,
too, honestly. In fact, we don't do politics on this show, brother.
right, and think I've seen the same video. He also did his body language, didn't he?
I
Or
don't know
maybe
if he
I
did
saw
his
it
body
different.
language or not. Well, I don't really. It was an Irish guy. I forget what the name
Okay,
of
this
it
might have
was.
been a different one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, it
because this
could
guy
be. I
was
mean,
not
there's been all
Irish.
sorts of reaction videos, like people reacting to Elvis's singing and all that. And
Right,
but
but
anyway,
but so to go back to, I got that Elvis album
hmm
recorded live at Madison Square Garden. Then I bought another Elvis album and another one, and then before I knew it, I was just like, I loved Elvis music. And then almost piggybacking that, in 1976, I heard, I think, on the radio that Elvis was going to be at the Charlotte Coliseum in
hmm
1976.
yeah,
Well, by the time I heard about it and my parents knew about it, I told them they'd already
hmm
sold out of tickets. Okay. So I was
wow,
12 then. We talked about it, and I said, okay, next year for my birthday, when I turned 13 in February. Well,
hmm
that's when my birthday is. I said,
hey, so
when, if,
you know, funny, so's mine. When we were talking earlier, it's like I think we were literally born a day apart.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I was born in, February 17th.
Yeah, and I was born the next day, man. Yeah, you think about it, it's like we were born just days after the Beatles made their debut on the Ed Sullivan Show. Okay, now we've dated
Exactly.
ourselves.
Yeah. Because they came in February, didn't they?
Yep, I believe it was February, I think 9th, 1964 when they made their debut on the Sullivan Show,
That's
but don't
right.
hold me to that.
That's right. Yeah. It was right. It was the beginning portion of February. But
Yeah, I'm kind of a history and a music nerd.
I am too. I am too. I love history.
Going back to Elvis at the Charlotte Coliseum, you
Yeah.
didn't.
So, well, yeah, we missed out on those tickets, but I found out
Mhm,
late, and plus I was 12, so I wasn't that aware of how to listen for them or how concerts
mhm,
worked and all that stuff. So anyway, fast forward the early part of 1977, January maybe, or maybe the end of 1976, they
mhm,
made an announcement on the local radio station, or one of them, that Elvis was going to be coming to the Charlotte Coliseum again. Okay,
mhm,
so I immediately told my parents. I said, "Look, I want to go see Elvis for my birthday." Okay, and sure enough, they you had to get a cashier's check. There was no Ticketron here in Charlotte.
right.
Some cities, and maybe Atlanta did at that time, had Ticketron, but we did not in Charlotte. So you had to get a cashier's check, and you had to mail it off to this address, and they would send you the tickets. Okay.
Wow.
Well, I waited, and waited. Well, it seemed like a lifetime, but it was maybe a couple weeks. Well, finally, a letter came in the mail, and I could feel that it had two tickets in it, because I couldn't go by myself because I was 13. There was a little strip of paper stapled to the tickets that said, the concert tickets you requested for Sunday, February 20th, 1977, have been totally sold out. However, Elvis Presley has agreed to do a show the next night, February 21st, on a Monday
Hmm.
night, and here are your two tickets to that show. If Elvis would not have done an extra show, I wouldn't have seen him. They were already sold out. But as luck has it, he did an extra show, and I went that night to the concert with my mom. And then that's when I got to see Elvis. And well, it was only 3 or 4 miles from my house on Independence Boulevard, which is Highway
Hmm.
74.
Yeah.
So it was a straight shot. So it was no big deal getting to the Coliseum. And I went to work with my dad on Saturday. So he did a concert on on Sunday night and on Monday
Hmm.
night. But on Saturday, when I would go to work with my dad, our airport here at the time was called Charlotte Douglas Municipal Airport.
Right.
And we would watch the planes land. At that time, I had a few magazines about Elvis. Of course, no internet back then. And we
Right.
were parked eating lunch, watching the planes land. And I told my dad, we knew Elvis was going to be in town Sunday and Monday. I'm sitting there with my dad on a Saturday, before the two Elvis concerts on Sunday and Monday. And I
Hmm.
said, Dad, I told my dad, I said, Dad, there's a jetway over there. And on the tail of it says TCB.
Hmm.
And I said, and it says Lisa Marie on. I said, Dad, I think that's Elvis's airplane. And this was at like maybe 2 o'clock on a Saturday. Now, I'll speed this up. So anyway, long story short, My dad and I got in his truck, drove all the way
Hmm.
around, and this was not at the main airport, but where the smaller jets and planes were, like
Right.
Cessnas and all that stuff. And I shimmied under the fence, and Steve, I promise you, it was Elvis Presley's Convair 880 jet sitting there.
Which I
And
believe was actually a jet owned by Delta Airlines.
yeah, it was. It was
Yep.
back in, I think it was decommissioned maybe in 19 early 60s from Delta. I don't know what, maybe it was a cargo plane after that. I'm not sure.
Well, but Elvis bought it, and the rest is history.
Right. So Elvis bought it in 75. But anyway,
And he
my
pimped it
dad and
out
I,
good.
oh, he did. He did. So my dad and I went there. I shimmied under the gate,
Hmm.
let him in. Now, of course, this is pre 9/11.
Oh
And my
yeah.
dad and I went out there. And then a couple more fans showed up. And about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, about 10 people were out there. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, about 50 people were out there. So come about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, there were maybe 60, 70 people out there. Now, understand, Steve,
Wow.
nobody had cell phones. Nobody had anything.
Right.
All
Right.
people were
Yeah.
talking. All people were talking about was Elvis's jet's here. Is he going to go anywhere? Well, starting at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, bands pulled up. They fueled it full of gas, so everybody had
Hmm.
an idea that
Hmm.
he was going to get on his jet for some reason. So fast forward to maybe 8:30 that night, or maybe 8 o'clock. 4 or 5 police cars pull up. They block us off, and then a limousine, a tour bus pulls up, and a few members of the band, his bodyguards, his girlfriend, and then Elvis walked up the steps, turned around and waved,
Now, was
and
that
got in.
Ginger Alden at the time?
Yes, that was Ginger Alden, and
Yeah.
hey, and believe it or not, that jet was fully fired up, ready. All engines were going when he got on the jet. It wasn't like, okay, let's do the pre-flight checklist. He got on the thing and it was ready to go. Okay.
Well, I'm sure.
And
I'm sure they did a pre-flight checklist already, but they figured
oh
he
yeah,
better get this out of the way so that he can get to where he needs to go.
exactly. And I'm gonna tell you what, Steve. About an hour or so before Elvis got there, they had the
Hmm.
steps pulled up. They had the door open, and I was one of the first ones to walk up the steps, remove the little barrier thing they had, the little rope like they used to have at a bank, or they have at a bank. I moved that, and I stood right inside Elvis's jet. And
Wow.
I remember on the left hand side when you walk in, like where you would look to the
Hmm.
cockpit,
Yeah.
there was a sink, and there was a big glass pitcher with a big wooden spoon in it, and they had just mixed some Tang.
Well, I tell you what, man, you're probably lucky that Red and Sonny weren't around there at the time.
Well, you know what? What's funny? Red and Sonny were let go
Right, they were let
July
go about a year
'76.
before Elvis died. Yeah, but I know. But I'm just
Right.
saying that. Yeah, I'm just glad that, like, say if those dudes were around, I heard that Red and Sonny kind of handled some
Yeah,
of the
and,
folks a little
and
rough.
Elvis was probably still getting ready at the hotel. So yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but still, that's a pretty
yeah,
cool story. I mean, you're one of
yeah.
the few
So
people ever step on that airplane back in the day.
yeah, so what kind of what I kind of a fond memory to me is both my mom and dad are passed away now,
Yeah,
and
both
to
of
know
mine
that,
too, and yeah,
oh really, yeah, that happens, you know.
they're in a better
But
place, man.
yeah, I know. So I got to see Elvis on Saturday with my
Hmm.
dad, and then I got to see Elvis on a Monday with my mom. So it
Oh.
kind of worked out, you know. But
Well, you
yeah,
know what? It's kind of funny. I think I mentioned this earlier that actually I went to an Elvis concert too, but let's just say Mama had an extra ticket and dragged me along. Now, of course, at the time, I will admit it wasn't something I really wanted to do, but looking back, and this was when Elvis was at the Omni in Atlanta, but looking
right.
back, I'm glad that I was there and I could say that I got to see Elvis.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So now, do you remember much from the concert, or were you just like, oh, I just want to get out of here?
I probably just kind of was, I was just there. The most thing I can remember is there was a woman in front of me with a beehive hairdo smoking like a chimney, but I mean, I admit I wasn't the Elvis fan that you were at that time in my life too, but still, just kind of say that I went and was at an Elvis concert was something that I kind of like to talk about. And I'll actually give you one more thing. Here's a family story if you don't mind me sharing it.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My Aunt Polly, God rest her soul, she saw Elvis way back in the day, like in the 50s, I think probably right about the time before Elvis really took off and he was doing, I guess, like small venues and he came to
Right.
Atlanta. Well, the story that I remember that Mama and Daddy told me that Elvis saw my Aunt Polly, and my Aunt Polly was a beautiful woman. I mean, she was a looker, son. And Elvis asked my Aunt Polly for a date. She
You
turned
are
him down.
kidding.
No, man. I was like, dang. And she turned down, and she just like turned. I mean, she turned Elvis down for a date. Now, of course, and I admit, sometimes I kind of started thinking sometimes, well, we'll see. What if my Aunt Polly actually married Elvis? So he would be my Uncle Elvis, and
Exactly.
maybe we could have got to go to Graceland or whatnot. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of an interesting story
What
that
did she ever give a reason why she turned him down?
I don't know. It had been several years since I'd talked to her, so I never. Well, one thing I heard, this is basically what I heard from my folks, and then two, they kind of said around her husband, my Uncle Norman, he was kind of, I guess, uncomfortable about that. I mean, but anyway,
Oh wait,
I
so
just
was
thought it was
she
an
married?
interesting family story.
Oh, hold on, was she married at? Oh, was she married at the time?
No, she wasn't married at the time. I think she was still, she wasn't interested in dating a dude.
Right, right. Well, that's a neat story. I mean,
But yeah,
and
anyway, that's my family Elvis story.
yeah, and that's one thing. There's so many aspects of Elvis and so many things that just added to why he became as big as he did and as big as he is. And
Yeah.
in addition to being able to sing,
Mm-hmm.
sing a phone book, sing gospel, sing country, sing R&B, sing
Yeah.
ballads, sing rock,
Right.
invent rock and roll. Okay, and I know some people debate that, but whatever. But
Oh, I
in
gotta tell
addition
you
to
one
all
more
that,
thing. I hate to interrupt you. I gotta tell you just one more thing if you don't mind.
no, go ahead.
For a few years, we lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, and one time we took a trip out to Nashville and then to Memphis with a couple that were friends of my folks. And I vaguely remember that we got to go on the grounds of Graceland, and I can just vaguely remember sitting on the steps of Graceland with my sister. And I thought there might have been a picture, and I've looked through all my family photos and whatnot, and I have not found.
Really?
But if I ever find that picture, I'm going to post that sucker. But
Oh yeah, that would be a
yeah,
really
I'll
neat
probably say
picture.
that's my biggest Elvis memory. But I was like
Yeah.
probably 7 years old when that happened, 6 or 7.
Wow. So yeah, so that would have been what, like 71, 70,
Yeah,
71,
right
72?
about probably 71. Yeah, because 72 we moved back to the Atlanta area when Daddy got transferred back to
Yeah.
Atlanta.
But and that kind of illustrates my point that one of the things that you try to think, what about Elvis made him so popular? What about him still carries on in
Mm-hmm.
2023? Why in 2022 was there a movie made about Elvis and everybody went to see it? And
It's funny you should mention that because that's one of my questions. Did you actually see the movie and what were your thoughts?
let me just say this. So the fact that you gave your Elvis story about him in Atlanta, one
Mm-hmm.
thing that Elvis did, and you mentioned you said it was your aunt that turned him down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So see, the thing is, Elvis toured and went everywhere. He went to little towns. He went to big
Mm-hmm.
towns. He went, even when he was huge in 1976 or 74 or whatever, he went
Mm-hmm.
to Asheville. He went to Greensboro. He went to
Mm-hmm.
Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He would go anywhere. So Elvis coded the country,
Mm-hmm.
covered it also. Almost any little town you went to, somebody, just like you illustrated, has got a dang Elvis story because
Yeah.
he was everywhere.
Yeah.
And he kind of gave people that personal connection, like
Mm-hmm.
you there in Atlanta or in Asheville. He was here in Asheville for 3 days in a row, 2 different shows a day, 6 different shows, and people think about Elvis like being one of their own, because he was in Asheville quite a few times.
Yeah.
And people just connected with him. He didn't have to be just Vegas or just Los Angeles or just New York. He would go anywhere that could hold 10,000 people. He'd go.
It's funny you should mention Vegas. I thought I'd heard before that at some point Elvis basically got sick and tired of Vegas toward the end.
Yeah, well, he did, and of course, a lot of this stuff has been written about and talked about, obviously after his passing. But yeah, just that I think he got tired of just the whole thing, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right about Vegas, because when you're in Vegas or when he was in Vegas for 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time, month and a half, whatever it was, I'm sure that got old of doing a show, going back to your room, then going to another show, and then he couldn't walk around the casino. He couldn't go to, drive around and go look at. Or drive to Falstaff or what. He could not do certain things. And
right.
So at least when he was on tour, it was a new city and it kind of kept that exciting. But yeah,
I think the whole Vegas thing, from what I understand, or at least they portray it in the movie, is basically Parker committed him to that awful contract so that mainly Parker could pay his gambling debts.
Right. Because he was it's funny, he was a big gambler. And going back to the movie, since you brought up the movie,
yeah,
I did go see the movie. And I kind of had seen some reviews and the trailer, beforehand. And I told myself, and my wife, I took my wife with me, of course. But I told myself, if I sit here and try to pick this thing apart, I know there's going to be some embellishments and they're going to do this. Right. And they're going to, if something happened in 73, they might make it happen earlier. Or it didn't happen like this or whatever. And if there's anybody that has not seen it yet, any of your listeners, if you go into it like, hey, if this is a story, like, almost like it's not fictional, but it's almost like a fairy tale. Well, not a fairy tale, but they mix some things.
It's given a Hollywood treatment.
Right. They use some artistic license, but if you go in knowing that, then you're cool and you'll enjoy it,
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not meant to be an actual historical movie. It basically is based on the tidbits of Elvis's life, particularly right around the late 50s or the 68 comeback special, which of course 68 comeback special was where Elvis proved to the world that is like, I'm still the king, bro.
Oh, I know. And, and I think they made a good point in the movie. In fact, they might have overdone a little bit. It was not supposed to be a comeback. It was supposed to be a Christmas special. That's
how Parker supposedly wanted it.
Yeah, or Andy Williams. It was supposed to be, dry and boring. And
Right.
thank goodness, I think it was Steve Binder, the
Yeah.
producer, said, "Hey, let's do this." So, thank goodness that he had the insight to make it what it was. And hey, how iconic is Elvis in the black leather suit in the round, just kicking out those
Yeah.
old songs.
And then of course, and I was listening to "If I Can Dream." I mean, I tell you, that song and memories. I mean, especially "If I Can Dream." I mean, that is probably, in my opinion, the most powerful song that Elvis ever did. I mean, it demonstrated his soulfulness. That right there to me demonstrated what the real, honest to goodness Elvis was.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in fact, it was just a couple nights ago. My wife and I watched it because your YouTube on your TV remembers what you watch or when you sign
Mm-hmm.
in, and it always pops up. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to see this again. And then sure enough, 5 seconds into it, I'm watching the whole thing. But
Yeah.
I really did enjoy the movie, and and not to crack on other actors that actually portray Elvis. Nobody, I hate to say this, and I'm not being partial, but nobody looks like Elvis. I mean, what's odd is a lot of times in Hollywood they'll get a star to portray somebody, and they look a lot better than the real person, or
Mm-hmm.
but in Elvis's case, they've
Yeah.
got a problem trying to find somebody that can halfway fill his shoes, and it's impossible.
Oh,
You
well, yeah.
cannot find
It's like trying to repaint the Mona Lisa.
exactly, and not I can't think of any actor, and even the guy that played him, Austin Butler.
Yeah.
A normal human. Well, I mean, of course, Elvis is human, but a normal guy cannot put on a jumpsuit and a cape and sideburns and a bunch of jewelry and pull it off.
No,
I
I
can't
mean
think of anybody.
that's basically about 300 gazillion Elvis impersonators.
Nobody can pull it off. I mean,
No.
somehow, in the '70s, this, Steve, was a
Mm-hmm.
horrible time for fashion. I mean, big bell
Yeah.
bottoms and big sideburns and big
Leisure
collars and
suits.
plaids, leisure suits. But you know what? Somehow, Elvis pulled it off. I mean, he pulled the horrible '70s off somehow. I don't know how he did.
Did you see it? There was a cartoon series that was streaming called Agent Elvis. Did you ever watch
Yeah.
any of those episodes?
I saw the trailer and I saw a couple episodes of it, and it was interesting, but
Mm-hmm.
it was just kind of a novelty thing. I kind
Oh
of
yeah.
appreciate them doing that, I guess. But they made it for adults, and it was full of
Right,
you
right.
know
I mean, it wasn't meant to be like an actual. I mean, the movie Elvis was a whole lot more historically accurate. Agent Elvis was just kind of like Priscilla, I think, had this, and yeah, they sold Priscilla this idea about because Elvis, if you remember Elvis going to Nixon and wanting to be a DEA agent, and they kind of, and so people thought, what if Elvis was actually a secret agent?
exactly. Well, yeah, and
And
then
of course,
when you
you
had
throw in a lot of gore and violence and all that garbage. But I will admit, I kind of enjoyed that, but I took it with a grain of salt.
yeah, I did too, and of course, immediately when there's a talking chimp that that they're taking some liberties there, but yeah, it was okay.
Well,
You
actually, the
know,
chimp was loosely based on a chimp that Elvis briefly had as a pet.
yeah, Bubbles. I mean,
Yeah,
no, I'm sorry,
no,
Scatter.
Scatter, right? Because Bubbles was Jacko's.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so Scatter was Elvis's chimp, but yeah, of course he didn't talk, he didn't kill people and stab them and
Yeah,
all that stuff. But I don't
and
even know
Elvis
if that.
never went to Vietnam.
No, no, but he did go to Germany. No, he did go to Germany.
Well, yeah, but that was during his time in the army. But after that, he never left the United States for the most part.
No, he went to Canada. I think just once. Went to Vancouver. I think once, not twice. But that's it, right over the border. Going back to, I saw Elvis. Yeah, we
Mm.
went full circle. I'm sorry. Now I'm
That's
so
okay, buddy.
easily. I'll just keep rambling, and I forget where my starting point. But yeah, I saw Elvis, and that solidified it because I listened to his music, and then when I saw him in person, Steve,
Mm-hmm.
and you went too. But me wanting to go so bad, and then for it to be almost I'm not gonna say a religious experience. Okay,
Yeah.
it wasn't. But when I saw Elvis and he stepped on the stage and they had all that leading up to seeing him, and then they played the 2001 Space
Mm-hmm.
Odyssey, and then the drum roll, and then the one little spotlight, and then Elvis appears. And I wasn't front row; I was back a little bit. And he's got on that white jumpsuit, and the flash bulbs are going off, and then he sings and he takes control. I mean, it was for somebody my age, 13. It was like, oh my God! I literally remember saying to myself, not audibly, I was like, I cannot believe he is real. I cannot believe
Mm-hmm.
that I am seeing Elvis like a human. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it just had a profound, I hate to say it, but it had a profound effect on me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
like, well, not the same as, Neil Armstrong walking on the moon, and then you come back to Earth, you go, okay, whatever. When I saw Elvis, it's like all of the music just paled to
Mm-hmm.
Elvis. I mean, I can't help it.
I can
It
understand.
just
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a few more things before we wrap this up. All right, number one, have you ever been to Graceland or to Elvis's birthplace in Tupelo? And if so, tell us about your experience and what's your advice to others visiting these places?
Okay, I have never been to Graceland, and I've never been to Tupelo.
Okay,
I
no
I
worries
have
then.
Elvis's Jets, the Hound Dog 1, 2, and Lisa Marie are parked
Right,
across the street. I have been in the Lisa Marie, but when Elvis was alive, but not
right.
at Graceland. And the main reason, Steve, I've never been to either of those is I really want to enjoy it. Maybe when I retire, I can go or spend some
Hmm.
time. But it's like pulling teeth to get my wife to want to spend a week in Memphis. Okay. And I don't blame her, but she knows
Hmm.
I'm so hardcore. I
Hmm.
guess if I would have really pushed it, we could have gone by now,
Hmm.
but I just haven't, and maybe the fact that I think it's kind of touristy or whatever, but I still would love to go into, Graceland, into the jungle room, into the trophy room, which was the racquetball court. And,
Well, I like
I
to
was,
go at least once just to say I've been there.
oh, you've never been.
Well, other than that one time I vaguely remember, but that was like back in the day when, when Elvis
Right.
was gone.
But you've
But
never been
to
on,
actually go in and experience
right.
Graceland.
Yeah, I would totally recommend people go. Just like I would totally recommend people see the Elvis movie if you haven't. And to me, that Elvis
Hmm.
movie for non-Elvis fans is almost like, remember Cliff Notes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
hell
like,
yeah, man. I remember Cliff Notes. I used them in high school, especially, man.
oh, I know, yeah. So, or you see those books like eBay for Dummies. Well,
Hmm.
that is like kind of like Elvis for Dummies. Go see that
Hmm.
movie, and you'll kind of get, any of your listeners that have not seen it, it gives you a good kind of outline of Elvis's life.
I think so, yeah.
But
And I've also
hey,
read some of his books. Like of course, I've read Elvis: What Happened, which was the book written by Sonny and Red West and Dave Hebler.
right.
And there's another Elvis book that I've been kind of reading off and on. But anyway, yeah, it's like I think I like to go to Memphis and just say at least I've been there. I may never go back again, but let's imagine for a moment that Elvis came to you
Right.
and you had the opportunity to ask Elvis just one question. What would it be?
Oh, wow. One question to Elvis.
Yeah, if he were
Oh,
standing
wow.
there right there in front of you, buddy.
Well, I've always been so intrigued by Elvis's first kind of forays into music, into recording, when he went into Sun Studio and recorded "That's When Your Heartaches Begin" or "My Happiness," and then, when he recorded the iconic, some people argue, is the beginning of rock and roll, "That's All Right."
All right, Mama. Yep.
Yeah, I think I would probably ask him about that. Just I would want to know what was going through his mind when he went totally out of the box, and in my mind, he invented rock and roll. What
Hmm.
what happened? I would love to, if I could be anywhere, a fly on the wall. I would like to be there when they recorded "That's All Right, Mama." Now, as far as asking him a question about it, I would love to do that too. But of any point in Elvis's career, I would love to be there when they did that, and Sam Phillips heard them and said, "Oh, whatever you just did, do it again." I
Yeah.
would love to be there.
Oh yeah. It's like in that movie when he was on stage and everything was like crickets, and all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, it's just, and I tell you what,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, I tell you what, that
I could only
movie,
imagine, man. In fact, that's one of the places I like. If I do go to Memphis, I definitely want to go to Memphis Recording Studio.
yes,
I have
and
been to RCA Studio B in Nashville, where Elvis recorded most of his albums, and from like '69 forward. And
yeah,
there is, if you ever go to RCA Studio B in Nashville, which you get as part of the Country Music Hall of Fame tour as an add-on, they actually have an X on the spot where Elvis stood and recorded.
really, yeah, I'll have to do that, and that's one thing
Yeah,
we
so if
talked
you
about.
go to Nashville, go to the Country Music Hall of Fame and get the Studio B tour. I mean, it was not just Elvis that recorded there, but Charlie Pride, Jerry Reed, you name them, they recorded there.
Really,
But
yeah, I'll have.
Elvis was, he was the man that recorded there.
Wow. Well, hey, so real quick, Steve. So,
Hmm.
I was an Elvis fan, and it solidified everything after I saw him in person.
Hmm.
And then throughout, when I was a teenager, of course, I went, when I was 15, 16, 17, I listened to rock music and all that. But, like Aerosmith or
Hmm.
Bad Company or Led Zeppelin, whatever.
Yeah.
But it didn't take long for me to go back and be in hardcore Elvis. I would say probably in the mid 80s is
Hmm.
when I started really getting back into Elvis again. I'm telling you, since then, it's not that I'm the best Elvis fan or I know the most or I collect the most, but when you're an Elvis fan for such a long time, you end up with a lot of knowledge because you research stuff. You end up with some,
Hmm.
I mean, in my bonus room
You're
upstairs, I've got,
passionate about it, man. You're passionate about it, and
that's,
every video I've seen shows how passionate you are about Elvis. I mean, you're the real deal as far as I'm
yeah,
concerned.
upstairs in my bonus room. Not only do I have the cup that Elvis drank out of, but I've got a girl's little hand glove. Girls used to wear little gloves in the 50s.
Hmm.
And I've got a glove that he signed in 1956 when he
Wow.
was on the first Ed Sullivan appearance. I've got a leather glove that he signed that was on a girl's hand. I've got the Jailhouse. Have you ever seen the movie Jailhouse Rock? I think I mentioned this to you. the first time we talked, but I've got the movie prop that Dean Jones played when he plays Treat Me Nice on
Ooh.
screen. I've got the on-screen used movie prop from Jailhouse Rock. And, Steve,
Mm-hmm.
upstairs, I have got a suit made by Lansky Brothers in Memphis, Tennessee, and it says made exclusively for Elvis Presley. On the
Man, I'm gonna have
pants,
to take a road trip up to Charlotte and meet up with you, bro.
I mean, I am hardcore, dude. I mean, I am. And maybe you can hear my passion, or maybe you just think I'm crazy. But
I
I
think
am just
passionate, bro.
I'm an Elvis fan, man. To this day,
Mm-hmm.
to this day,
Well,
you know.
before Elvis, there was nothing in terms of music.
Well,
Well, I
John
wouldn't
Lennon.
say there was nothing in terms of rock music. I mean, if you didn't have Elvis, you wouldn't have had the Beatles, you wouldn't have had the Stones, you wouldn't have had Springsteen, or you wouldn't have had anybody else for that matter. In fact, did you ever see the Springsteen? You ever hear the Springsteen story? Where Springsteen back in the '70s jumped the fence and went up to Graceland to try to
Yeah,
sell Elvis his song "Fire."
yeah, yeah. That was done by eventually the Pointer Sisters, I believe.
Right, the Pointer Sisters did it, but now at the time he got there, of course he didn't know. Of course he's darn lucky that one of his guys didn't
Right.
give him the old hee ho right out the gates. But I thought it was pretty gutsy for him to
Yeah.
actually jump the fence and try to go up there and talk to Elvis himself. Now I wouldn't recommend that with people because these days there's stalking laws.
Well, like you said, before Elvis, there was nothing. Well, that's John Lennon's famous quote.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
right. You're absolutely right. But
and then
what's ironic is that Elvis didn't like the Beatles.
well, yeah, I don't. Well, I know the thing about Nixon, and
Yeah,
they were in the drug culture and all that stuff. And
right.
I just, yeah,
Man, I want to get off on all the negative stuff, but supposedly Elvis wasn't too enamored with that facet of the Beatles.
no, he was not, and that was kind of a bad example. And they were doing LSD and stuff, but he did record a couple of their songs. He did something, during the Aloha show,
Right.
and he recorded "Hey Jude," and he did Get Back in concert,
Mm-hmm.
1970 at the International. But and also Bono from U2 said that when he was asked about Elvis, he said, "Elvis is alive, we're dead." And I guess he was
Yeah.
talking about just music itself. And I think that's why maybe in the mid '80s I kind of went back to
Mm-hmm.
Elvis, because I was like, well, these other people, like you said, Steve, where would they be without Elvis?
Right.
So why listen to like an impersonator? Well, I'm not trying to discount other bands or other groups or
No.
other acts,
But
but yeah,
Elvis's own influences went back to gospel. Hank Williams, Hank Williams, who
oh yeah,
basically invented country music as we know it.
right. Now I'm a big Dwight Yoakam fan. I've seen him five or
Oh
six
yeah,
times.
Dwight Yoakam, he's pretty cool, and he's a big Buck Owens fan too.
Yeah, Buck Owens, and he's covered quite a few Elvis songs. Suspicious Minds and
Yeah, I've
Little
heard that.
Sister and all that.
Oh, I
But
love his version of Little Sister, man.
oh, it's good. I mean, I tell you what now, and I like Elvis's version of Suspicious Minds the best.
Right.
But Dwight Yoakam does a kick butt version of Suspicious Minds. He
Oh
really
yeah.
does.
I mean, nobody can
But
do it like Elvis. It's kind of like saying, okay, here, paint the Mona Lisa. Your Mona Lisa ain't never going to be as good as Da Vinci's.
right. But I'm just a
It might
big
be, it
Elvis.
might be pretty decent. It might be pretty good in its own way, but it ain't going to be like Da Vinci's. Kind of like Elvis.
Yeah, and like today on the way home from work, I listened to the classical music station here, and then I
Mm-hmm.
had an Aerosmith Greatest Hits CD,
Mm-hmm.
and I listened to Sweet Emotion by Aerosmith.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I do listen to other stuff, but when I want to get down and listen to something good, I listen to some Elvis. His
Yeah.
voice, his voice, everything about him is just high class. And I think the fact also, Steve, and I'll stop here,
No,
but
that's okay. Keep going.
Elvis's music, I think, holds up and holds the test of time, because not only was Elvis's voice great, not only did
Mm-hmm.
he have all that charisma, but he could afford from a very young age. He was so bankable that RCA gave him Boots Randolph. They gave him Floyd Kramer. They
Oh
gave
yeah,
him,
they gave him the best of Nashville studio musicians.
and then his band. Okay, so James Burton,
Mm-hmm.
it was probably out of sight as far as money wise to try to hire him. To get J.D. Sumner out of retirement and to have not one quartet, J.D. Sumner and the Saints Quartet, but also to have another quartet voice on stage. All
In
those
fact,
things
J.D. Sumner, Elvis was a big fan of J.D. Sumner.
he was, and he
Yeah.
used to sing Elvis into the all night gospel music sings there in
Mm-hmm.
Memphis when Elvis was 13, 14. But when you listen to Elvis, and in the 60s, the 50s,
Mm-hmm.
the Jordanaires, the 60s, Boots
Yep.
Randolph, Floyd Kramer, Chet Atkins on guitar,
Mm-hmm.
Boots Randolph. Okay, these guys are solo artists in their own right.
Oh yeah, I mean they're like what the Wrecking Crew was to Los Angeles. So, like these were the top. Of course, Chet
Yeah,
Atkins was the head of RCA Nashville, and all those other guys were like they were the A-list of the studio musicians, the hired hands, so to speak. And in fact, I think one person, you know who Patty Loveless is, don't you?
exactly.
Patty Loveless's husband is Emery Gordy Jr., and I believe at one time, at least, he was a bass player for Elvis.
Yeah, he was. Because they sometimes when Jerry Schiff couldn't fill in, he used him.
Yeah.
In fact, I tell you what, another song I love is an old song, but it's the duet Patty Loveless and oh God, what's the guy's name? They sing no nobody answers when I call your name.
Oh, Vince Gill.
Vince Gill and Patty that is one of my top 10 favorite country songs of all time.
And
I love it.
Patty Loveless and Tanya Tucker they're being inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame.
I did not know that. I
Yeah, it was
saw.
just announced not too long ago. In this fall, Patty Loveless and Tanya Tucker will be going into the Country Music Hall of Fame.
I did not
So
know
they'll be
that.
enshrined with Elvis, among others.
Wow. I think I saw that Tanya Tucker has a new CD out.
Yeah.
Yeah, this like I saw like a little review of it. And it was kind of they gave it high praise.
Yeah.
So and how do you forget Delta Dawn?
Oh yeah, Delta Dawn is written by another legend. Alex Harvey wrote that song, and Helen Reddy also had a hit with Delta Dawn, if I recall.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think Tanya Tucker was the youngest person to ever win a Grammy.
Hmm.
At that she was 13 or 14.
Oh yeah, I mean she was a child. I mean she was a child star. In fact, that's why she got inducted. There's like two categories in the Hall of Fame. There's one is kind of like the modern era, which Patty Loveless was inducted as, and
Right.
then the Legends era, which that's where Tanya Tucker was inducted. And actually, this is kind of getting off the this is like getting off the subject, but do you know who Keith Whitley is?
Yes, married to Lori Morgan.
Yep, Keith Whitley. I tell you, the man who died way too young. I've actually visited his grave in Nashville, and I stood for about 20 minutes. And there's just a part of me. I started asking him questions like, Why'd you have to go?" Because I mean, that was a man that was just he
Yeah,
was just backs to the wall country.
he was. And related to that, I guess Doug Stone married Lori Morgan after that. And
Actually, I think I think it was Sammy Kershaw.
oh, you're right, not Doug Stone. Doug Stone sings Pine Box.
Yeah, in fact, Doug
And
Stone's also from Georgia. He and Alan Jackson are both from Noonan, and they
you're
both did
right.
it
You're
about
right.
the same time. But Alan
And
Jackson became the legend.
yeah, Sammy Kershaw, whose big hit was it? She don't know she's beautiful.
Yeah, that and Cadillac Style, and he did a pretty good cover of Third Rate Romance.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Yeah,
But
he did. Yeah.
But hey, to
But
take it full circle, you were talking about the Wrecking Crew. Well, of
mhm.
course, Glenn Campbell
Oh
in the
yeah,
Wrecking
Glenn
and,
Campbell. Yep.
and married to Tanya Tucker.
And I don't think they were married; they
Or
dated.
do they
But
date?
yeah, Tanya Tucker actually never got married, believe it or not.
Really? Well, I know they had kind of a tumultuous
Yeah,
for a while.
yeah. Supposedly Glenn Campbell wrote about it in his autobiography, Rhinestone Cowboy. But I don't want to get into any of that negative crap, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But
So
anyway,
anyway, I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say, I was just trying to think if I left anything out. So yeah, mid '80s, I kind of got. Well, not that I ever was not into Elvis, but it just kind of, it's just steamrolled since then. And I'm just, it's if you walk into my house, Steve, you cannot tell there's an Elvis fan. In fact, you can't even tell a guy lives there. My wife has decorated the whole house, but when you go upstairs to my bonus room, you can tell I'm a big Elvis fan. But I'm not one of
Mm.
these guys that has sideburns or try to walk around and say thank you very much all the time and all that. I'm not
That's
total.
kind of cheesy in my opinion, but you don't. It's like you don't need to be acting like the guy.
No, but I'm a somewhat sane Elvis fan, but I am a passionate Elvis fan. And like you mentioned, and I mentioned at the very beginning, please, you guys, go to my YouTube channel, the Elvis Cup Guy. And Steve, you said you're gonna put a link. And every week,
You
it's
bet you,
not
man. I'm going to put a link out there. All right. Is the Pope Catholic?
okay. Yeah. What is he? Still, I know he's
As far as
Italian.
I can tell, but I don't want to get into religion either. But you be assured, hey, y'all, we're going to have Wade's Elvis Cup Guy YouTube link out there.
Yeah, and
It's going to be out there. Ain't no questions.
every week, I put out an Elvis video that's usually 15 to 20 minutes long. I just put one on 2 days ago, and I show some rare 8mm footage. I show
Hmm.
some memorabilia. I talk about Elvis, and I'm not your regular Elvis channel where a guy just sits there and holds a record and just is monotone about it. I try to make my stuff exciting because if I don't, people just cut it off. So I try
Oh,
to be.
I
Show
agree. I
my
mean, I
passion.
can see your passion, man. I was like, I can just feel your passion for it when I
Yeah,
watch those videos.
and it ain't. Hey, just like Jerry Lee Lewis, it ain't faking. It's real. It's legit. I'm a big Jerry Lee Lewis fan too, and Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash. How you gonna beat those guys?
Well,
But yeah,
you
it's
know
such,
that actually the Beatles were a big Carl Perkins fan, but that's beside the point.
yeah, especially George Harrison with Matchbox, and everybody's trying to be my baby. I'm a big Beatles fan too, but hey, they don't hold a candle to the King of Rock.
Who does?
Nobody
You know,
in
it's
my
kind of
book.
funny. I had a coworker right after Michael Jackson died. I had a coworker. Well, he's gonna be bigger. It's like I'm sorry. I didn't want to get in an argument, but no, I mean Jacko was an icon in his own right, but he ain't no Elvis.
He's not. He's not. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, no dissing. God rest both their souls. They might be up there in heaven talking about who knows what. He might be talking about Lisa Marie. Well, who's up there in heaven too, I guess.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, and that's a shame
Anyway,
about her too, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It really is. But all right, one final thing. I just want to
Yes,
know. I
sir.
mean, obviously, you are big into Elvis and all sorts of other music. What are some of your other hobbies and interests, say, outside of music?
Oh
What?
wow. Well, I collect a lot of like a lot of stuff. I collect. I think we mentioned this before. We talked about
Mhm,
before the phone call. Or maybe I'm a history buff. I enjoy,
mhm.
World War II. I collect military stuff. I'm into political stuff.
Yeah.
Campaign buttons. I collect all kinds of music records. I've got a little sports car. I love it. I like to go look for treasures at an antique store or an
Hmm.
estate sale.
Hmm.
A lot of things just intrigue me, and I'm always looking for something that's, you know, different and new. And just a lot of stuff. But history, I'm a big history buff.
Me too,
I
bro.
don't know, Civil War, especially being down here in the South. I love, the history of the Civil War, World War II, U-boats, the
How about the American
Titanic.
Revolution?
Oh, American Revolution. In fact, right now we're rewatching Turn about Washington spies. Have you seen that?
Yeah, that was streaming several years ago, wasn't it? I think I might have seen one or two episodes.
It was on AMC. It's 4 seasons, and I'm just rewatching that now. In fact, when we get done with this, I'm going to go eat dinner. We're going to watch some Turn. And
Cool.
anybody that has not seen Turn, it is the story. It's got Benedict Arnold, it's got George Washington, it's got the spies, the double spies, all that, and it is
Hmm.
really good. It's really good.
Actually, speaking of the American Revolution, if you ever go to Charlotte Cemetery, and this is another one of those really deep experiences I had. It's back 20 years ago when my wife and I were in Charlotte for a Southeast Regional Toastmasters conference. I went by the old Charlotte City Cemetery, and I stood there at the grave of my like great great something grandfather Thomas Polk, who
Really?
was who he and his brother William were supposedly the signers of the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence. But and I mean, I was just so moved by it. I got on my phone, and I called Mama, and I said, "You never guess." I almost just like broke into tears because it was like
Oh,
just
wow.
being there with a ancestor who was this. I mean, this guy fought for my freedom,
Exactly. And are
and
they
I'm related
related to,
to him.
or is that any relation to James K. Polk?
He and I are distant cousins. In fact, if anybody actually has any Polk ancestry, chances are we're distant. If you
Really?
had any Polk ancestry, then chances are we are distantly related.
Yeah, because the James K. Polk birthplace is about 20 miles from where I'm at right now.
Well, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go check that out. I mean, that Kings Mountain and
Oh, yeah. And
Coffins
that's
and all that. My wife and
yeah,
I are big history nerds ourselves, and
about 20 miles from where I am right now is where they filmed a lot of the movie The Patriots at
yeah,
a little town called Brattonsville. But that opening scene they filmed there, but they did a lot. So yeah, there's a lot to see.
yeah.
The South is just rich, and of course, I'm not even going to bring up Atlanta. My God, I mean, how much history is there?
Well, yeah,
But
Atlanta. We all know about. Yeah, trust me, we all know about Sherman and Atlanta. But people who are real. But if you look at the Revolutionary War, a lot of the North gets to, except for Yorktown, a lot of the North gets to press. But the war was actually won in the Carolinas.
right, right, yeah. Well, I can tell your history, but hey, what are your hobby? What just a couple things that you're into?
I've been into bowling. I've taken up that in the last couple of years in a seniors bowling league since retiring. I'm big in the Lions Club here in Georgia. I've also been in Toastmasters, which is where I met my wife. Toastmasters is a public speaking, communication, and leadership organization. That's why
Right?
I kind of talked about the icebreaker because in Toastmasters, when you join a Toastmasters club, the first speech that you'll give will be what we call an icebreaker, and it's just 4 to 6 minutes getting up in front of a group of people and just talking about yourself and getting comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. In other words.
And Steve, you can, and some of your listeners that are tuning into this, you can really learn. This is so elementary, but you
Okay.
can learn a lot about someone if you just take the time to talk to them, ask them a couple questions, and listen.
Well, that's
It's
that's my, that's
amazing,
my basic thing about this show. It's like I just want to be like just a couple of people, and it's like I'm not trying to be the next Barbara Walters or something.
right? Yeah, and people, usually just about anybody has got an interesting story.
I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just like who would have known if I would have seen you walking around somewhere, I would have never known we had so much in common. I would have never known. See what happens when you talk to someone. We really have a lot in common, especially the birthday.
Well, I'll be darned. Well, I tell you what, if I ever really put this thing off the ground and do like a round whatever, I'll have to invite you to be one of the friends on Steve Williams and Friends.
Oh, it would be an honor, Steve. And you're such a nice guy. You're so
Oh shucks.
organized, and your Toastmaster skills just shine right through.
Well, I appreciate that. There's lots of Toastmasters clubs there in the Charlotte area. Just check it out. join it. You may not be a lifer like I am, but go in, at least complete the basic stuff. I've met a whole lot of good people through Toastmasters. I met my wife in Toastmasters 30 years ago. If it weren't for a Toastmaster, I wouldn't have joined the Lions Club. To me, it was one of those things that really just made a total difference in my life from being just a guy in my shell and just
Right, right.
eat, sleep, go to work, eat, sleep, go to work, lather, rinse, repeat.
Right. And doesn't that just carry over into real life? Because it
Dude,
gives
yeah.
you the confidence to talk to people, you know?
Oh yeah, and learning how to communicate, man, and deal with people. I didn't join Toastmasters. I mean, there are some people I've known in Toastmasters who went on to become professional speakers, but a lot of people like me just joined Toastmasters because we wanted to develop our people skills.
And in any of your listeners that are watching, listen to this. There are and I'm not saying anything negative about the younger generation.
No.
But so many things now with younger people, they really are lacking sometimes social skills because everything's like this, a Zoom call or a Facebook or FaceTime or texting. And a lot of younger people, I've noticed in my job, a lot of younger people in our office just don't have communication skills like they should. And I'm sure something like Toastmasters would be a great avenue for them to take to kind of broaden it, right?
It would be. And I'll tell you, my listeners, go to Toastmasters.org and learn all about it. Toastmasters.org.
I'm gonna probably be one of the first ones to go there when we get done with this. Oh no, I'm gonna watch Turn first and eat dinner.
Well, I understand. Yeah, I mean, take your time. The website ain't going nowhere anytime soon.
Okay, but Steve, I really appreciate this. Blast talking to you. And man, I'm telling you, we didn't have a time constraint. I would just keep talking. You probably fall asleep, but I can.
Oh
just
no,
talk.
no, I ain't been falling asleep, man. But I understand. They just say all good things must end. Well, Wade, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk. I think this has been one of the best dang interviews I've ever done, and I hope that your fans will tune in and listen to it to kind of learn about the guy behind the Elvis Cup Guy.
Well, I'll tell you what, Steve, I'm going to give you a shout out on my channel. And like I said,
oh, shucks.
You're going to put a link up to it. But yeah, the Elvis Cup Guy on YouTube. Like I said, this morning, I hit 8,000 subscribers. So I will give you a shout out.
That is freaking awesome.
And you are just right in my demographic too. People that, aren't just like kids trying to watch a TikTok or something. People that want to hear, interesting conversation, can sit back and take it in and just sit back and enjoy it,
Wade, I thank God that we did not have Facebook and social media and cell phones and all that when you and I were teenagers.
Man, I know I wouldn't have graduated. I would have been so trying to meet girls. I would have not gotten.
Oh, yeah, and of course, with people being bullies on it. But again, I don't want to get into the negative about it. I think that in many ways, so I'm not saying, pull the plug on social media, but I think that people need to learn how to be one-on-one with each other. And I think we can make the world a better place as a result.
Exactly. And, a lot of times people, Facebook and all that other kinds. I'm not even a member of on Facebook at all. I mean, I have YouTube, which that's my outlet, kind of a hobby of mine. I make those videos, but I'm not into a bunch of social media other than.
Well, in a way, you ain't missing nothing.
Right.
The negative. I mean, the one thing that turns me off about social media is all the negative crap on it. I don't care what your political beliefs are, religious, whatever. I don't. It's like I don't have an agenda, man.
Exactly. I
don't have an agenda, and I don't put any of that crap on my Facebook page.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because I mean, why turn it into a platform for a bunch of why invite a bunch of negativity? That's all what you're
right. I don't care if you're black, you're white, you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian.
Exactly. Really. Why make it a big issue? Because that's going to get people riled up. But Steve, you are really just top notch. And this went way better. Well, not better. I knew it was going to go well, but it just was so smooth. I could keep talking forever.
Thank you for being my guest tonight. And
yes, sir.
I've been talking to Wade Jones, the Elvis Cup Guy. And one of these days, Wade, we're going to have to hook up and have a face-to-face.
Hey, two good old country boys from the South.
There you go. Amen, brother.
Oh, and another thing, I like your backdrop you got behind you there too, Steve.
Yeah, thanks.
Reminds me of we got similar mountains, in North Carolina.
Oh, I love the North Carolina mountains. That's like I love going to Asheville. I love going, went up to Lake Junaluska recently, just right across the Georgia line, Hayesville.
Right,
that's beautiful country up there, man. I love it. Northeast Georgia and Western North Carolina. You can't beat it with a stick.
No, you sure can't. Well, Steve, thank you once again for having me on. I really I got a kick out of this. I appreciate it.
Well, same here, brother. Thank you. And you have a good one. God bless you and yours. And we'll talk again soon. You have been listening to Steve Williams and Friends. Created, hosted, and produced by yours truly, Steve Williams, for Subligna Valley Productions in Atlanta, Georgia. Visit us at stevewilliamsandfriends.com. Please direct all inquiries to Steve at stevewilliamsandfriends.com. Thank you for listening, and peace out, y'all.